Welcome, everyone, to today's webinar, Escape the Pilot Trap, Orchestrate the Agentic Enterprise with Agentforce 360. Thanks for joining us today. AI pilots today are everywhere, but turning early experiments into reliable, scaled outcomes remains one of the biggest challenges for enterprise leaders. The shift to agentic AI raises new questions about orchestration, governance, and readiness, and how to design workflows that actually deliver measurable value. So in today's conversation, we're going to break down what it takes to move beyond isolated proofs of concept and towards a truly agentic enterprise. We're going to explore how to identify high impact use cases, build the right data and integration foundations, and create guidelines that ensure trust and accountability as you scale. Now, joining me today are two great speakers. We have Megan Piccininni. Megan is the Global Salesforce Practice Leader at NTT Data. Megan, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Nick. And hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Megan Piccininni, and I lead NTT Data's Global Salesforce Practice. And we at NTT Data, we really sit at the intersection of strategy, technology, and large-scale transformation with hundreds of Salesforce clients around the world. So we've really had a front row seat into how agentic AI is reshaping the enterprise. And I am extremely thrilled to be here today with Susan Emerson, who brings the product vantage point from Salesforce and has been instrumental in shaping the industry's thinking on Agentforce 360, which we'll hear more about today. Today, just to set some context, is very intentionally kept practical. So there's no demos, no hype. It's just going to be a candid conversation about what we've learned, what's working, and really how leaders can confidently move forward from pilots to real orchestrated outcomes with agentic AI.
Thank you, Megan. I love when you do my segues for me and do the work. I didn't have to even do the work. I already announced Susan. That's fantastic. I'm going to do it anyways, though. We also have joining us Susan Emerson. Susan is the SVP of Product for Agentforce at Salesforce. Susan, thank you for joining me as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here and to be talking about what we see happening in the space and with Salesforce and our products. I'm with the Agentforce product team. I've been part of this team since it started 3 years ago. It wasn't branded Agentforce at the time. And then prior to that, I've got a long-standing trajectory with our analytics data and machine learning products at Salesforce for the last 10 years.
Great. Let's jump into questions. And Megan, I'm going to start with you. And it's sort of a question looking back, but kind of trying to set the tone for what we should be thinking about for 2026. And it's looking back at 2025. What did this year maybe teach business leaders about agentic AI, and how has that conversation evolved from maybe the beginning of the year till now?
Yeah, thank you, Nick. That's a great question. And I'd even like to back it up further. So the way that I think about, starting with 2024, that for us, we really saw as the year of experimentation, where organizations really started to dip their toes into the pond with agentic AI. In 2025, this is really the year that enterprises realize that scale is requiring orchestration, not just interaction. And so most leaders started, with chat-based agents, isolated automations, and they quickly hit ceilings. So what 2025 really taught us is that agentic AI only creates value when it's actually connected to data, to workflows, to policies, and the systems across the business landscape. So, we also observed with our clients a big shift in mindset. So we saw leaders stop asking, what can an agent do? And started asking, okay, what outcome should this agent own end to end? And that's really the moment where the real transformation begins. And so I also, think that the other really big piece here is that the governance conversation has materially matured. So leaders are now seeking to understand, or are really truly internalizing, that trust, transparency, and the human in the loop design are the accelerators and not just obstacles. And so this is really going forward, the year that AI will become part of the operating fabric of the business. That's what we expect to see more of.
My sort of way of describing it is, 2023 was the year of the March of the Consultants. Like, what does this mean for my business? Like, is my operating model in jeopardy? What should I be doing? And it was like academics and consultants in the boardroom. And then, as you said, in 2024, tons of learnings, lots of POCs. And I think a lot of organizations, the year of 25, there was an expectation of this was going to be the year of the return, where you go back to the board and back to the CFO and say, these are the outcomes we have. I think for many organizations, it's actually maybe been a little bit slow on that take. And I think that just has to do with the rate of change in the industry. So for example, when I think about like some of the big change from our perspective in calendar year 2025, this was the year where we went from generative AI to agentic AI. And there was a lot of learnings with that in terms of what did that really mean and how is prompt engineering different from having a reasoning engine create an AI orchestrated set of capabilities. And then with that, helping people understand what does good look like, what are the hero use cases, tangling with risk and compliance folks that want to know how these things operate and how they align to the risk profile of an organization. And so there's just been sort of like a whole new wave of learning, if you will, this last year with the whole agentic set of capabilities.
This is a great conversation. I love where we're going because we started with the thing that everyone knows about AI, but we're really talking about some practical use that has business value. And I like this. But what I'd like to do is almost also start, Susan, this is going to be for you. All three of us have mentioned Agentforce 360 at least once. And so maybe could we start, because I just want to make sure that the audience all is level set here. And just in plain language, could you tell them what Agentforce 360 is?
So I'm going to first start with like what is Agentforce and then tackle the 360 add on the end. So for us, what an agent is, it's a very specific job to be done. Like your job is to answer questions with knowledge. Your job is to prosecute this claim. Your job is to create the mutual close plan for the sales rep, whatever the job to be done is. And then within that framework of the job to be done, what data do you gift it with? What do you tell it it's allowed to do? And what are the guardrails of the things you don't want it to do? And then finally, the actions that it can take. Like, so that's the body of work that we have for an agent. It's one of the things that's allowed us to scale really quickly because of this sort of component mindset and architecture. So that's how we would define an agent. And so when we talk about Agentforce 360, Agentforce 360 is the whole platform that embodies that, which in addition to these tools that build agents also, have multiple pathways for injecting and grounding things with data, all sorts of things around trust and compliance boundaries, and then the capacity for these agents to be where the work happens. Like where the work happens is such an important component, whether that user is sitting in Sales Cloud or Service Cloud, or Agentforce Sales and Agentforce Service, and that's why I'm going to come to that in a moment. But in the flow of work, if you will, because what we want to do is lubricate all these processes, take friction out of the way, and use AI to automate things. So in the flow of work is great. In our customer-facing experiences is mandatory. And so whatever these channels are, get these things there. So the Agentforce 360 part, what I would just say, earlier this fall, we at Dreamforce, we did a lot of rebranding, if you will. And that's, I just mentioned, Agentforce Sales, Agentforce Service. And the reason that's so important is that, this AI process automation at scale in Salesforce is synonymous. Like Agentforce and Salesforce it's like one term these days. Like there's no Salesforce without AI, right? And so everything was rebranded with this Agentforce moniker. And 360 has always been the mission of our company in terms of put your customer in the center of the business model, whether it's sales, service, marketing, commerce, and align your business model that way in a 360 way.
That helps quite a bit. Megan, I wanted to see if you could maybe provide a little context here, because I remember in one of the recent blogs when I was doing some diligence for this webcast, you called Agentforce the nervous system of an organization. Could you talk a little bit about why?
Sure, yeah. And this is kind of extending what Susan just said and with this anatomy. So if you think about the human nervous system, right? It senses, it interprets, it decides, and then it triggers action across the entire body cohesively. And so Agentforce 360, the way that we view it is playing a very similar role for the enterprise. So, it's not just responding to prompts one off, it's actually perceiving signals across the data, customer interactions that are coming in, and the systems that it also interacts with. And so what is really important too is that it's applying context and policy, and specifically the policy of the organization at hand, and then orchestrates the right next actions across both within the application and then also beyond for true end-to-end impact. So, in other words, the way that we think about it is that it turns disconnected workflows and processes into coordinated and intelligent behavior. So that's really why we see it as the infrastructure layer, right? The connective tissue that allows organizations to operate with speed and consistency and intelligence at scale.
And then to put a little bit of a practical spin on this, Susan, maybe I'll put you on the spot and hopefully this will be kind of easy for you, but could you maybe share, I'll call it a wow moment, when a customer just really realized the potential of Agentforce 360 in action, so the audience gets a kind of a practical sense of the value of this beyond the promises and the marketing that what it can accomplish for them?
Yeah, I'll give two examples. And one sort of starts with the conversation we were having with the senior leadership team. And across this dialogue, we kept using the word automation. And at some point, the CEO called timeout on us because he thought AI was chatbots, just simple chatbots. He hadn't fully appreciated the way it could end to end take friction out of every process in their business by having these workflows and autonomous AI decisioning and dispositioning things and determining how to act. And in that same meeting, this was a large insurer, we showed an end-to-end example of how, with the input of a whole bunch of information that was going to be used for an underwriter to assess risk, how at every step of the way the AI could do things like read the documents, form an opinion, look at the policies and procedures for the risk profile, go see if they had additional data, and then based on this at every step saying, well, what is the next step? Is it a certificate of insurance? Is it a proposal? Is it going to the underwriter? Is it a thank you but no thank you? And so seeing how this was now end-to-end AI operations, and I don't know if you use the word beating heart, but these CRM systems are the beating heart of actual workflow in these organizations. And so for that example was the power and the promise of this AI automation at scale in systems of record that are already running their organizations was really important for them. And then the second example I reached to is, we talk a lot about digital labor. I mean, some people call it software, some people call it agents. We're starting to really refer to this stuff as digital labor because when you do that, you start to treat it in different ways, like your perspective of how you curate it and interact with it and grow it and shape it is sort of like a nice reminder that these things are like a new employee in your organization. So your digital labor colleague, right? And so this is an example with another organization where everyone back in the day, meaning 3 years ago, hallucinations were always the thing that people would lean into, what can we do to eliminate hallucinations? So this is a story about digital labor, but I'll come back to the hallucination point. So in this example, they are using Agentforce to pre-screen candidates for a certain thing. I won't use their customer name or anything like that. And it's something that extends their organization by multiple languages and by 24/7 capacity and without a human capacity constraint for this one process that they are very comfortable automating with AI. And as they were talking about their first experiences as it went live, they were shocked when they learned things like people engage with this stuff outside of operating hours of their 9 to 5 banker hours, right? I mean, I don't know if it was 9 to 5, but you get the idea. And then they were shocked that the AI actually followed instructions a little bit more faithfully than humans who can get bored, who could have a bad conversation 2 minutes ago in the office, or maybe you're having a bad day. And they had this accelerated value by having this automated process facing an external constituent to their company. And we just kept saying, yeah, that's digital labor. It extends your workforce. It's 365. They have skills and talents that you splice together into these agents. It's a whole new world. So that sort of realization, you can use marketing words like digital labor. When people see it added to their workforce, it's actually pretty special to see how excited they get.
And I'll add one more from the NTT side. So we worked with the Global Tech Products Organization, where the sales cycle involved eight different systems and had a very uneven handoff into their delivery and customer success teams. And so when we worked with them, their leadership had assumed that an agent may shave minutes off of specific tasks. And, instead, when we unveiled the outcomes to them of what we've designed, an Agentforce 360, which was an Agentforce 360 workflow that stitched together the entire quote to delivery lifecycle. It was quite incredible, the outcome. We watched the first real run through together with them, in a room. And in this scenario, the agent validated data. We leveraged another agent to generate an entirely compliant proposal. Then from there, intelligently selected which approval processes to engage and to invoke. And then from there, really importantly too, is that it triggered the downstream delivery tasks and also KPI measurement, which was a really big gap for them. And you could just literally see, in the room, the shift from curiosity to conviction. And so this was a really fun wow moment for us to observe, where it wasn't just, automation of discrete tasks, but it's the orchestration that really brought it to life from the end-to-end process holistically.
Those are both some really great examples. I know that there's a lot of organizations, maybe some people that are actually even attending today's webinar, where they're sort of stuck in pilots. And Megan, I'm going to first ask you this, but Susan, this also kind of a question is going to go to you as well. But I looked at, for example, MIT put out their State of AI in Business report this year. And I'm having to look at some of the data here in front of me for embedded or task-specific generative AI, which is as close as we can get to agentic-AI, which is what today's topic is about, but that's where it kind of fits in this report. Only 20% of organizations even have piloted something, let alone only 5% have it fully implemented. And so there's this idea of being stuck in a pilot a bit here. And Megan, again, I want to first pose to you, and then Susan, I'd love to hear you as well. If an organization feels stuck in a pilot, what should they do next? What's your recommendation there?
Yeah, so when organizations get stuck in pilots, it's almost never because the agent itself failed. It's because the pilot was typically built either in isolation with the monolithic focus, or it was scoped way too broadly, leading to endless ideation and never really actually locking in on what they're going to move forward with in a meaningful way. And so the way of this, the way to get out of this and is really to sufficiently narrow the focus to high value workflow with clear measurable outcomes that will not only shorten cycle time and reduce handle time, eliminate rework, all the productivity measures, which was kind of really that cost savings leading factor that most have been looking for, and really also shifting to improving conversion and revenue generation and the value add for their business. So at the same time, you have to open the aperture and, but to look at that entire process, but not go so wide that you're, not really focusing on the outcomes that can be generated. And then also the agents rely on, data, policy, downstream systems. And so standing up the correct foundation. So whether that be, the combination of context, integration, governance, all in parallel is really key. You don't need to, be perfect, but you just need to have the structure for an agent to act with confidence and therefore provide you the ability for it to act with confidence. We also keep our clients, we also help them to define a simple operating model early. This is really important. So what does the AI own? What do humans own? And how does the oversight of all of that work? And we found that, without that clarity, that's where really adoption will stall. And so, that's why we at NTT Data, we, focus with our clients on a model where we provide the organizations a pragmatic, hands-on path to production with quick wins that restore confidence and build momentum. Just like Susan had said earlier, it's kind of back to the drawing board, and these are a lot of the conversations that we're having today. Also, at NTT Data, we do have an OSP model. It's an offering from Salesforce that provides our ability to bundle our services along with Salesforce subscriptions. And many clients were interested in this because it gives them the iterative, hands-on path to production without getting lost in these ideation cycles and then having us handhold them throughout that journey.
I can also resonate with that. How do we move from pilot into production mode? And one of the things that I always have to remind myself on is that this whole space is a year old. And so curating and really developing these skills, prompt engineering and working with reasoning engines, it's a new talent for a lot of people to absorb. And this is when you go beyond the simple chatbots, you're doing a lot of very interesting process reengineering as well. So it's not non-trivial is the first thing I like to remind myself of. But in terms of the why do people get stuck in pilot, I think that MIT study, it's got 6 characteristics of it, which I sort of often list through. And one is picked a wrong use case. Another is they set the wrong expectations. Another thing is they didn't really have the right kind of alignment or breakthrough with compliance and risk mindsets. Data's not ready, those types of things. There's 6, I think I got to 5. But those are a good, healthy bunch of them. And what we, at Salesforce, because we're anchored in these business systems of sales, service, marketing, and all of these industry clouds, we can help with a lot of these things in terms of the skill set that maybe hasn't been fully matured in your organization because of the out-of-the-box things that we have that people can look at and then modify. We help because we have we have a really strong point of view of what the hero agents are for these personas that sit in these products. So the ideation stage can go a whole lot faster because you can say, yeah, that's the agent that does X, Y, or Z. If that looks like us, we want to try that. So we have a lot of things that we can do to help accelerate that that POC stage with product. But what is more like on the, a conceptual stage is to bring to the foreground, these are not set and forget software developments. These is digital labor. And just like you would bring in a new intern into your organization or even a new employee, the training doesn't end on week one. You are always shaping, you are always coaching, you are always expanding their roles. And so this mindset of old software, set and forget, probably doesn't apply. You should have some expectation that you're going to be improving and modifying your agent. Not that it didn't work or it drifted, but you need to give it more skills and more context and things like that. So we've got a whole framework for things like that in terms of how to think about what good looks like, and to help people, go through everything from ideation to successful production scale.
And Susan, I heard you actually mention, you said one of the problems MIT had touched on was data's not ready. And I heard Megan say data is the foundation. And so I want to explore that just for a second here. Is there always a data journey that has to happen before there's an agentic one for organizations? And then maybe could you touch on how Data 360 and MuleSoft help organizations get the foundation right?
Sure. So AI definitely wants all this data. The context and the grounding is really, really important. I guess our caution would be data is a forever project for many organizations. And no matter how organized some of their structured operational systems are, it still could be the Wild West for folks, especially with unstructured data. So in terms of in going forward with these agentic systems, pick a use case where you have data that's good enough, that's clean enough, that's like you got the lineage and you're comfortable with it. Because if you went off and did a 5-year data project, you're going to miss a lot of innovation on the AI side. So just know that data is forever. Just know that unstructured data, there's probably a lot of very interesting things you can do to take all that stuff and turn it into more structured systems that multiple things can use. But don't let it be the excuse, is I guess the guidance I would say. In terms of accessing data, I think everything in Agentforce is sort of the architecture, wherever you'd want it to be open, it is open. It's open to different, foundational models. It's open with things like, MCP and A to A, but it's also open in terms of these data pathways. And you mentioned Informatica, which we just recently closed on that acquisition. But these data pathways for us are very rich. It could be grounding with Salesforce data. It could be grounding with data that we leverage with Data Cloud, with our zero data copy network, Data 360. I should adjust my branding there. And what's so powerful about that is we can ground on data without rematerializing it and shifting it and moving it into Salesforce. It's just in place, permission aware, and we leverage it. Or things like MuleSoft, or things like, or things like Informatica as we've acquired them. So many, many pathways for executing with data.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with Susan. It really resonated with me. What we see every day is that the agentic AI doesn't require the perfect data state. As Susan said, it's kind of a forever project, right? But it does require a governed and contextual one. And so that's where Data 360 is such a step change, because Data 360 brings policy, lineage, as she was mentioning, quality, and also access to one place. So an agent isn't making decisions in the dark. And so we've also found that, and I'm very excited about, MuleSoft's agentic fabric layer, and that's really becoming just as crucial. It allows agents to take action across systems safely with guardrails and observability, providing some of that confidence to the business that it doesn't have to be perfect, but it at least has that structure. And so almost every program that we run, we ensure that these two capabilities are really becoming the scaffolding that lets the business move fast without breaking trust or compliance, essentially.
This is a fantastic point, this idea around data. I'm glad I asked the question, just because it seems like I could see organizations, especially people that are even just watching today's webinar, they got stuck with their pilot because they didn't think their data was good enough, or they just didn't really realize they need to provide maybe more data to provide that context. So really good there. Megan, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the idea of organizations that want to get to this agentic enterprise. There's obviously many paths. Maybe they have to get the data right, but once they've got that, they're sort of wondering where to go next. Can you talk a little bit about how Salesforce and NTT Data each define the agentic enterprise and maybe how you see those paths coming together between the organizations?
Absolutely. So at NTT Data, we define the agentic enterprise as one where outcomes, not the tasks, are owned by autonomous governed agents that work across functions. It's a model where work flows into with intelligence and people focus on judgment and innovation. So what aligns our path with Salesforce is that it isn't a tools conversation so much. That's, it's a operating model conversation. So Salesforce provides the platform. This includes Agentforce 360, Data 360, MuleSoft, Tableau, and Susan mentioned Informatica. And NTT brings the transformational rigor. We bring to the table industry patterns and also the change leadership to actually make the platform run the business. One accelerator that I'd like to call out that we're seeing a lot of demand for and also support for this is the OSP model. I mentioned this earlier, where it's Salesforce bundling subscriptions and services, and this is really transitioning to the industry trend of services software. And one of Salesforce's largest, as one of Salesforce's largest OSP partners, NTT Data is providing clients with a single point of accountability for both their Salesforce consumption as well as their operational outcomes together. And so it lets us connect what's often siloed, running the operations, continuous enhancement, integration, data quality, and now agentic AI all together under one roof. And that's really where the magic happens, because once we're operating at the client's environment and they're end-to-end, we can actually help define how their human and AI workforces and operate together and evolve in cohesion. And that's really when the agentic stops being a pilot and truly becomes, part of the fabric in which the enterprise truly runs.
And Susan, you actually just previously mentioned Informatica. And I want to go back to that really quickly if we can, because I know that's a recent acquisition for Salesforce here. How does that strengthen Salesforce's overall data foundation for agentic AI so that all the things that Megan was talking about, become possible? How do you see it complementing Agentforce 360, Data 360, Tableau? What's the answer there as far as where Informatica, what piece in the puzzle does it play?
Yeah, we're really excited about the acquisition. It's a huge unlock into the, I'll use the word beating heart again, the beating heart of all these other enterprise operational systems that are beyond Salesforce, right? And Informatica is a world leader in that. And so that unlock, that ability to leverage all that corporate data for context and grounding for AI and analytics and all of the work that humans and AI will do for customer success is just at that level, super cool. But then there's the other, additional capabilities that we get with the components there with, MDM tools, lineage, cataloging, and a really great set of data products to add to what we've already got.
Yeah, that's so insightful, Susan. I'll also just add one thing from the NTT Data perspective. We've been longstanding partners with both Informatica as well as Tableau and MuleSoft. And so this announcement is incredibly exciting to our clients. It's also personally exciting to me because I've been in the Salesforce space for well over 20 years at this point, working primarily with enterprise clients. And Informatica has been such a steady accompaniment along the years for us as we always are, working with data alongside Salesforce. And bringing this together is just so exciting for us as well. And what it really means in practice is that leaders get a more unified data backbone. So that's from the ingestion to the cleansing, to the context and the insight, all feeding that agentic layer. So it's going to reduce complexity, accelerate governance, and also shorten the path from data to action. So for organizations that are looking to scale AI, this is, as Susan said, a major unlock.
And sort of final thought type question, Susan, I'll pose to you, and then Megan, I would welcome any thoughts you have as well. Just looking ahead to 2026, you mentioned having going out of pilot and doing something that was, I don't think you said good enough, but you used the word good. And I found that kind of interesting because normally people are trying to do things with excellence and so on. But sometimes it's like, well, get it out there and then learn from it. You talked about that a little bit. What will good look like within the agentic space in 2026?
Well, looking ahead to 2026, there's a number of things that we've just recently come out with that we're really excited that we think will accelerate kind of the use case space and accelerate building great agents and accelerate the pace of building great agents. You talked about good enough, like we're looking for great agents now. And so some of the things that we did with our agent building technology at Dreamforce, we introduced what we call hybrid reasoning. So we've always had, an LLM reasoning engine at the heart of what Agentforce does. And then what we've realized that there are, of course, so many places where the creativity of an LLM comes into play, answering questions with knowledge, having top of funnel conversations, like understanding intent and creating an AI orchestrated plan. But like sometimes there's just, you want the thing to work the way you want the thing to work 100% of the time. Whatever your reason is, you have no tolerance for the 2% like LLM deviation, right? And so in our agent builder, we now have this hybrid reasoning where you can choose to use probabilistic, with the LLMs, or deterministic with if-then logic. And so that's going to be a really big unlock for organizations that, really want to go big scale with AI automation, but need the confidence for certain types of routines to be always operating a certain way. An example might be something as simple as loading up the context of who the customer is before the AI interacts and chats with it. Like that would be a deterministic step. Look up this customer, look at the last 3 orders, tell me 3 things about them, categorize them in terms of their sentiment or like segmentation, that kind of stuff. Or look up our operating hours at the beginning of a customer-facing chat, because at the end of this chat, if I have to pass to a human, I want to know if there's a human in the chair, and if not, I'm going to process it a different way. So those are just things that always happen. You don't hope the LLM gets pushed into a corner and operates. So we think that's going to be a really big unlock in terms of like speed, great agents, and building great agents faster. And then sort of taking a bigger look at things. We're really excited about the way large consumer brands can start to reimagine the customer experiences. Like when we started with the Agentforce stuff with customer-facing applications, on day one, it was things like, let's support the folks in the call center who are answering questions. Let's have ambient listening. Let's help them close the case. Let's help them get knowledge very fast. We then moved to these customer-facing experiences where those same, AI capabilities were customer-facing and fully agentic in terms of interacting with the customer, classifying intent, answering questions, initiating processes, giving status on processes, all that kind of stuff. And now I think a lot of organizations are, looking at their web experiences and wondering why they have a search bar here and a chat bot there and all this content that floats in the middle that is operating independently. Shouldn't this stuff all be immersive and adaptive? So I think it's going to move from the, like, we did great stuff with call deflection, or we did great stuff with meeting a customer on the channel of choice, to building amazing immersive brand experiences. And we're working with some different customers on that right now. And Williams-Sonoma, gave a good example of that at Dreamforce earlier this year. So I think that's, really interesting. And so I'll just leave it at that and see what Megan has, and then.
I love the way you frame that, Susan. From our vantage point, the good to great in 2026, it's not going to be defined by how many agents an organization produces. I think that was kind of an initial measure we were seeing. It's really going to be defined how well those agents are working together, as Susan noted, to provide those immersive experiences that are going to drive measurable outcomes and impact to the business. We're expecting to see a clear separation between companies that have deployed isolated agents and companies that have built orchestrated operating model to support this. And so, the leaders, we're expecting to see them have 3 main things. The first one being outcome ownership. So the agents won't just assist, but they'll own the entire workflow with clear KPIs, with baked in guardrails and observability built in as well. And the organizations that succeed will treat the agents as a part of the workforce, not as experiments anymore. The second one is around a governed nervous system. Susan has talked about the beating heart. I talked about this nervous system analogy. So this is really where, data quality, policy, lineage, and the integration will feel fully invisible because they're truly embedded into the fabric of how the business runs. And the trust will shift from being a blocker to actually an accelerant once those frameworks are in place. And the third one is really about the culture. It's about a culture that embraces co-working with agents, right? And so in 2026, the most mature organizations will have frontline workers and leaders who understand specifically when to rely on agents, when they need to intervene, and also how to continuously refine the workflows and improve. And so, as a result of this and kind of that, dichotomy in the pathways, we'll really expect the change curve will flatten dramatically going forward. I'll also say that in 2025, it was the year of, providing, that agent, proving that agentic-AI was real. But in 2026, it'll really be the year that enterprises start to operationalize it. And so we'll have, faster cycle times, fewer handoffs, and more consistent decisions. And teams will finally have the space to do the work that only humans can do together. So the best part is that we're already seeing early signals of this.
Yeah, I love that. Giving the agent their accountability and their responsibility. Like here's your KPI, here's your outcome, right next to the human, and having that measurement very, very present as part of the digital workforce and the outcome and the processes that they are automating and driving value for.
Yeah, I'd agree. I remember you actually saying, I think it was Megan, you had said something like the agent's going to own part of the process. The human's going to own part of it. And that's a great perspective for this. And that really kind of outlines a little bit about everything we've talked about today. That's the goal here. Susan, Megan, just want to thank you both for sharing your insights today. For those of you watching, that is all the time that we do have today. If you'd like to find out more about NTT Data and Salesforce and how they can help unlock your agentic enterprise vision, use the URL you see on the screen. This is going to conclude today's presentation. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you all in the next one.